She was dismissed, belittled, and almost forced out of the prestigious auction house simply because she didn't fit their image of wealth. The staff snickered behind her back. The director suggested she leave, and the elite attendees openly mocked her modest appearance. But then the grand doors swung open, and in walked her partner. Not just any person, but the enigmatic tech billionaire whose foundation was about to change everything, with determination in his stride and purpose in his gaze. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The autumn wind scattered crimson leaves across the cobblestone streets of Boston's historic district as Olivia Chen hurried toward the imposing granite façade of Thornfield Auction House. Her sensible brown loafers clicked against the pavement, a sound drowned by the purr of luxury vehicles pulling up to the curb. Chauffeurs opened doors for women draped in designer attire and men whose watches cost more than Olivia's annual salary at Westbridge Community College. Clutching her worn leather messenger bag closer, Olivia paused to admire the elegance of the auction house. Established in 1887, Thornfield had maintained its reputation as the premier destination for the ultra-wealthy seeking rare historical treasures. Today marked the opening of the Monarch Collection auction, a legendary event held once every decade that drew elite collectors from around the world. Olivia didn't belong here, at least not by appearance. Her navy cardigan, though neatly pressed, had been mended at the elbow. Her simple black slacks and minimal jewelry stood in stark contrast to the opulence surrounding her. Yet beneath her unassuming exterior, Olivia possessed something many of these collectors lacked: genuine passion and deep knowledge of historical artifacts, cultivated through years of dedicated study and the loving mentorship of her Uncle William. Uncle William had raised Olivia after her parents died, in an accident when she was just 8 years old. A modest antiquarian with an encyclopedic knowledge of Asian artifacts, he had instilled in Olivia an appreciation for history's overlooked treasures. Value isn't measured by price tags, he would tell her, but by the stories objects carry through time. Now, with Uncle William's health failing and his 75th birthday approaching, Olivia had made the decision to attend this exclusive auction. Hidden among the catalogue of priceless items was a peculiar lot, a small, ancient astronomical device known as the Empress Celestial. The brass and silver instrument, dating back to the Ming dynasty, was believed to have belonged to a female astronomer in the Chinese imperial court, a distant ancestor of Olivia's family, according to the stories Uncle William had shared throughout her childhood. The starting bid was far beyond her means as a community college professor, but Olivia had been saving diligently for years. She had also secured a modest grant from her college's Cultural Heritage Fund, arguing that the artifact could serve as an educational centerpiece for their small but growing Asian studies program. Taking a deep breath, Olivia climbed the marble steps and pushed through the heavy oak doors into Thornfield's grand foyer. The space opened up like a cathedral to wealth, with vaulted ceilings, Venetian chandeliers, and display cases holding previews of select auction items. The air carried the subtle scent of old money, polish, perfume, and privilege. "Welcome to Thornfield," greeted a young attendant with a practiced smile that dimmed noticeably as he assessed Olivia's attire. "Are you here for the public viewing gallery?" Olivia straightened her posture. "No, I'm here to register as a bidder for the Monarch Collection auction." The attendant's eyebrows rose fractionally. "I see. The registration desk is that way, but..." His voice lowered. "You should know the opening bids start at $50,000, and most items sell for millions." "Thank you for your concern," Olivia replied evenly, "but I'm aware of the price points." As she walked away, she caught his skeptical glance to a colleague, followed by a poorly concealed smirk. Olivia had anticipated this reaction but steeled herself against it. "Uncle, William's voice echoed in her mind. Never let anyone make you feel small. Knowledge and sincerity outweigh flash and pretense any day. The registration area buzzed with activity. Staff in crisp black attire floated between wealthy clients, offering champagne and answering questions with deferential nods. Olivia approached the marble counter where a woman with immaculately styled hair was processing registrations. "Hello, I'd like to register as a bidder," Olivia said, producing her identification and the letter confirming her grant funding. The woman, whose name tag read Veronica, looked up with a customer service smile that froze when she saw Olivia. Her gaze flicked from Olivia's face to her modest clothing before returning to her computer screen. "Bidder registration requires proof of funds or a letter of credit from a recognized financial institution," Veronica stated flatly. "We don't accept personal checks." "I understand," Olivia replied, presenting her documentation. "I have a certified bank draft and a grant authorization from Westbridge College." Veronica examined the papers with visible skepticism. Her fingernails polished the exact shade of Thornfield's signature burgundy, tapping against the counter. After a painfully long pause, she pushed a registration form toward Olivia. "Fill this out completely. I should inform you that Thornfield reserves the right to verify funds and approve bidders at our discretion." Olivia nodded and began completing the form, aware of the whispers around her. From the corner of her eye, she noticed a tall man in an impeccably tailored suit approaching the desk. His presence commanded attention, and Veronica's demeanor transformed instantly. "Mr. Blackwell, I wasn't expecting you on the floor today," she gushed, immediately abandoning Olivia's paperwork. Preston Blackwell, Thornfield's director, was known for his ruthless business acumen and impeccable taste. His salt and pepper hair and patrician features graced the society pages frequently, always in the company of Boston's elite. "Just making sure everything is proceeding smoothly, Veronica. The Harringtons have arrived, and Ms. Sophia is particularly interested in the Imperial Jade collection." His voice carried the polished cadence of old Boston wealth. "Of course, sir. I'll have Marcus attend to them personally." Veronica reached for the phone, then glanced back at Olivia with obvious annoyance. "I'm just finishing up here." Blackwell's gaze fell on Olivia, taking in her simple appearance with a quick, dismissive assessment. "Is there a problem?" "No problem, sir. This lady wishes to register as a bidder. I was explaining our verification process." Olivia extended her hand. "Olivia Chen, I'm interested in lot number 42, the Empress Celestial astronomical device." Blackwell's handshake was brief and cool. "Ah, yes, the Chinese artifact. Fascinating piece, though considerably more valuable than most people realize. The bidding will likely exceed 300,000 within the first few minutes." "I'm aware of its value, Mr. Blackwell. I've studied similar instruments extensively." Olivia tried to keep her voice steady, fighting the urge to qualify. Herself, with her academic credentials, Blackwell's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Have you indeed? How charming. Well, I'm sure you'll find the public gallery provides an excellent educational experience, even if bidding proves prohibitive." He turned back to Veronica. "Do verify those funds thoroughly. We wouldn't want anyone embarrassed by reaching beyond their means." With that, he strode away, leaving Olivia feeling both dismissed and determined. Veronica returned to Olivia's paperwork with visible reluctance. "I'll need to consult with our financial department before issuing a bidder's." "Paddle," she said, gathering Olivia's documents. "Please wait in the atrium. Someone will inform you of your status shortly." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Rather than waiting passively, Olivia decided to view the exhibition area where auction items were displayed for potential bidders. She navigated through clusters of wealthy attendees, their conversations a melodic blend of accents from around the world, all speaking the same language of privilege. The exhibition hall was arranged by cultural origin and historical period, with the Asian antiquities section positioned in a corner with somewhat less dramatic lighting than the European treasures. Olivia made her way directly to the display, case containing the Empress Celestial. The device was even more beautiful than the catalogue photographs had suggested. Roughly the size of a dinner plate, the intricate astronomical instrument featured concentric brass rings marked with ancient Chinese characters, a central silver dial inlaid with lapis lazuli, and delicate dragon motifs along the outer frame. Despite centuries of age, it retained an otherworldly elegance, suspended in its display case, like a frozen moment of scientific brilliance. "It's a reproduction, you know," came a silky voice from behind her. Olivia turned to find herself face to face with Sophia Harrington. Though they had never met, Sophia's face was instantly recognizable from society magazines and charity gala photographs. Her wheat blonde hair was swept into an architectural updo, her figure draped in a designer dress that probably cost more than Olivia's car. "Excuse me?" Olivia asked, genuinely confused. Sophia gestured toward the astronomical device with a manicured hand heavy with jewels. "The celestial thing. It's not authentic, just a clever copy. My father had our authentication team examine it last week." She delivered this information with casual cruelty, as if announcing the death of a dream gave her pleasure. "With all due respect, that's not possible," Olivia replied carefully. "The provenance is well documented through the Imperial Palace Museum archives. The astronomical calibrations also correspond perfectly to the specific year it was created." Sophia's perfect eyebrows arched. "Oh my, someone's done their homework. How adorable." She turned slightly, signaling to a group of equally polished individuals who drifted over like expensive magnets responding to her pull. "Camille, Derek, Vanessa, you simply must meet." She paused, looking at Olivia expectantly. "Olivia Chen." "Yes, Olivia. She's a... What exactly are you, dear? A student? Tourist?" Sophia's words dripped with false sweetness. "I'm a professor of art history at Westbridge College," Olivia stated, trying to keep her dignity intact. Derek, a man whose entire being screamed hedge fund manager, chuckled. "Westbridge? Isn't that the community college out in the suburbs? I didn't realize they had professors. I thought they had instructors." Camille, wearing what appeared to be this season's Chanel, didn't even try to hide her amusement. "Oh, how dedicated of you to come all this way just to look. The educational experience will be valuable for your students, I'm sure." "Actually, I'm here to bid," Olivia corrected them quietly. This statement triggered a moment of silence followed by poorly concealed laughter. Vanessa, the youngest of the group with the studied boredom of inherited wealth, widened her eyes in mock surprise. "On what? The catalogues?" she asked, generating more laughter. Sophia placed a hand on Olivia's arm in an intimation of concern. "Honey, the items here start at prices that would swallow a community college salary whole. Perhaps you should reconsider before you embarrass yourself." "I appreciate your concern," Olivia replied, gently removing Sophia's hand. "But I've done my research and prepared accordingly." At that moment, Preston Blackwell approached with a young man in tow. "Ms. Harrington, I see you found the Asian antiquities section. Allow me to introduce Marcus Reed, our specialist in Eastern artifacts. He can answer any questions about the Imperial Jade collection you're interested in." Marcus, a man perhaps in his early 30s with kind eyes behind stylish glasses, nodded professionally. "It would be my pleasure, Ms. Harrington." Sophia, however, wasn't finished with Olivia. "Preston, this lady claims she's here to bid on items, on a professor's salary from..." She paused for effect. "Westbridge Community College." Blackwell's expression shifted to one of practiced concern. "Ah, Ms. Chen, I've just spoken with our financial department. I'm afraid there seems to be some confusion regarding your funding situation." Olivia felt her stomach tighten. "What confusion? My documents are in order." "Well, you see, for items of significant value, like those in the Monarch collection, we require liquid assets or credit facilities substantially above the estimated hammer price. Your grant and personal savings don't meet our threshold for qualified bidders on premium lots." "That's not mentioned anywhere in your registration materials," Olivia pointed out, struggling to maintain her composure. Blackwell offered a smile that managed to be both apologetic and dismissive. "It's standard practice in high-end auctions. I apologize for any misunderstanding. You're welcome to enjoy the public viewing areas, of course." Sophia's group barely contained their satisfaction as Blackwell continued. "Marcus, perhaps you could show Ms. Chen to the public gallery. The main auction floor will be closing to prepare for registered bidders soon." Marcus nodded, looking uncomfortable with the situation. "Of course, sir." As they walked away, Olivia heard Sophia's theatrical whisper, "Can you imagine showing up at Thornfield in those shoes and thinking she could bid against serious collectors? Some people simply don't understand their place." The humiliation burned through Olivia like acid. She had anticipated skepticism, but not this level of calculated exclusion. Marcus led her toward the public gallery, his steps hesitant. "I'm sorry about that," he said quietly once they were out of earshot. "The director can be traditional about who he considers serious bidders." "Is it true about the financial requirements?" Olivia asked. Marcus hesitated. "Not exactly. There's flexibility, especially for institutional buyers. But Mr. Blackwell tends to be selective about who receives that flexibility." They reached the entrance to the public gallery, a balcony area overlooking the main auction floor where observers could watch but not participate. "The Empress Celestial is lot 42, Marcus said. "It should come up about 2 hours into the auction, and for what it's worth, you're right about its authenticity. I examined it myself when it arrived." Olivia looked at him, surprised by this small kindness. "Thank you for telling me that. If you don't mind me asking, why that piece specifically? Most collectors are focused on the jade or the porcelain from that era." Olivia hesitated, then decided honesty couldn't hurt now. "My Uncle William traced our family lineage to Shulajun, the female astronomer in the Forbidden City, who likely created that instrument. He spent his life studying her contributions to astronomy, which history largely erased." She smiled slightly. "It was probably foolish to think I could acquire it, but I wanted to try, for him." Something shifted in Marcus's expression. "That's actually remarkable. Most people here just want another trophy for their collection." He glanced at his watch. "Look, I need to return to the floor, but..." He was interrupted by a commotion near the main entrance. Heads turned as the grand doors opened to admit a small entourage. At the center walked a man whose face had graced the covers of technology magazines and economic journals. Gabriel Reynolds, founder of Quantum Dynamics and one of the most innovative tech entrepreneurs of his generation. Unlike many of the ostentatious attendees, Reynolds dressed with understated elegance, a simple dark suit that spoke of quality rather than flash. His company had revolutionized renewable energy storage, making him one of the world's youngest billionaires, though he was known for avoiding the spotlight. "I didn't realize Reynolds was interested in historical artifacts," Marcus murmured, clearly surprised by the tech mogul's presence. Olivia watched as Blackwell practically sprinted across the floor to greet Reynolds, his entire demeanor transformed into one of obsequious welcome. Sophia and her friends similarly gravitated toward the newcomer, drawn to power and wealth like moths to flame. "I should go," Marcus said. "The auction will begin soon. I'm sorry about how things turned out, Ms. Chen." As he hurried away, Olivia considered leaving. The prospect of watching the Empress Celestial slip away, sold to someone who viewed it merely as a status symbol rather than a piece of living history, was almost unbearable. Yet something kept her rooted in place. Perhaps Uncle William's oft-repeated belief that bearing witness had its own kind of power. She found a seat in the public gallery, positioning herself where she could see both the auctioneer's podium and the main floor where registered bidders sat in plush chairs, numbered paddles resting beside them. From this vantage point, the social hierarchy was on full display. Sophia's group occupied prime positions near the front, while Gabriel Reynolds and his small entourage were escorted to reserved seats in the center. The lights dimmed slightly, conversations hushed, and a distinguished man in formal attire approached the podium. The Monarch Collection auction was about to begin. For the next hour and a half, Olivia watched as historical treasures changed. Hands for staggering sums. European paintings, rare manuscripts, and ancient sculptures, each introduced with flourish, bid upon with casual gestures that represented hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, and dispatched to new owners with the sharp crack of the auctioneer's gavel. Throughout, she noticed Gabriel Reynolds participated selectively, securing a rare first-edition scientific manuscript and an early navigational instrument, but passing on the ostentatious items that generated fierce bidding wars among status-conscious collectors like Sophia. As Lot 42 approached, Olivia's disappointment gave way to a quiet resignation. She would simply observe, then return to Uncle William with photographs and her personal observations about the Empress Celestial. Perhaps that would be enough. "And now, ladies and gentlemen," the auctioneer announced with practiced enthusiasm, "we come to lot number 42, the Empress Celestial, a rare Ming Dynasty astronomical instrument attributed to the imperial court astronomer Shu Lijun. This exceptional piece combines scientific precision with artistic craftsmanship, featuring silver inlay, lapis lazuli accents, and functioning celestial mapping capabilities. We'll start the bidding at $100,000. Olivia watched as several paddles raised immediately. Sophia Harrington's went up with lazy confidence, as did paddles from two Asian collectors and an older European gentleman. The price climbed rapidly, $150, $200, $250. At $300,000, several bidders dropped out. By $400,000, only Sophia and one of the Asian collectors remained. The latter hesitated at $450, and Sophia smiled triumphantly as she raised her paddle for $500,000. $500,000 from paddle number 17, the auctioneer confirmed. "Do I hear $550? The Asian collector shook his head slightly. "Very well, $500,000 going once." Olivia felt a pang of grief. The instrument that represented her family's lost legacy would become just another display piece in Sophia Harrington's collection, probably forgotten after the initial novelty wore off. "Going twice." A voice cut through the hushed anticipation. $1 million. Gasps rippled through the auction house as Gabriel Reynolds raised his paddle. Sophia's head whipped around, her expression a mixture of shock and indignation. $1 million from paddle number 23, the auctioneer confirmed, unable to keep the excitement from his voice. "Do I hear $1,100,000? Sophia hesitated, then raised her paddle with visible determination. $1,100,000 from paddle number 17, Reynolds responded immediately. $2 million. The doubling of the bid caused a buzz of whispers. This was no longer just an auction. It was becoming a power struggle between old money and new technology wealth. Sophia's face flushed as she gripped her paddle tighter, raising it again after a moment of calculation. $2,500,000. Reynolds didn't hesitate. $5 million. The room fell silent. The astronomical jump in price was unprecedented, even for Thornfield. Sophia's hand trembled slightly, her knuckles white around her paddle as she slowly lowered it, conceding defeat. $5 million, the auctioneer repeated, his voice hushed with awe. Going once, going twice. Sold to paddle number 23, Mr. Gabriel Reynolds, for $5 million. Applause broke out, not the polite, restrained acknowledgement that had followed other sales, but genuine, startled appreciation for the drama they had just witnessed. Reynolds nodded once, his expression unreadable as he spoke quietly to an assistant beside him. Olivia felt a complex mixture of emotions. Relief that the Empress Celestial hadn't gone to Sophia, sadness that it remained forever beyond her reach, and curiosity about why Reynolds had wanted it so desperately. At least, she consoled herself, it had gone to someone who seemed to genuinely appreciate historical scientific instruments. As the next lot was announced, she noticed a stir of activity. One of Reynolds' assistants was speaking to Marcus, who looked up toward the public gallery with a puzzled expression. After a brief conversation, Marcus made his way up the stairs toward her. "Ms. Chen," he said, slightly out of breath, "Mr. Reynolds would like to speak with you." Olivia blinked in surprise. "Me? There must be some mistake." "No mistake. He was quite specific." Marcus gestured toward the private rooms beyond the main auction floor. "If you'll follow me." Bewildered, Olivia rose and followed him down from the gallery. As they crossed the main floor, she felt the weight of stares, particularly from Sophia's group, who watched with undisguised curiosity and suspicion. Blackwell interceded as they approached the private area. "Marcus, what is the meaning of this? The auction is still in progress, and Ms. Chen is not a registered bidder." "Mr. Reynolds specifically requested to speak with her, sir," Marcus replied firmly. Blackwell's expression cycled through confusion, suspicion, and finally, a strained smile. "I see. Well, we certainly wouldn't want to keep Mr. Reynolds waiting. This way, please." The private meeting room they entered was elegantly appointed, with antique furniture and art. Gabriel Reynolds stood by a window, examining something in his hands, the Empress Celestial, already delivered to its new owner. He looked up as they entered. "Thank you, Marcus. Mr. Blackwell, I appreciate your accommodation, but I'd like to speak with Ms. Chen privately." Blackwell hesitated, clearly burning with curiosity, but nodded stiffly. "Of course. Just press the call button if you need anything at all." When the door closed, Reynolds turned fully toward Olivia, studying her with intelligent eyes. "Professor Olivia Chen," he said, "specialist in Asian art history and cultural astronomy at Westbridge College. Author of Forgotten Stars, Women Astronomers of the Ming Dynasty." Olivia couldn't hide her surprise. "You know my work?" Reynolds smiled slightly. "I make it a point to research areas that interest me thoroughly. Your monograph on Shu Li Jun was particularly insightful." He held out the Empress Celestial to her. "Would you like to examine it? I'm told you have a personal connection to this piece." Stunned, Olivia carefully took the instrument, feeling its substantial weight and the smooth coolness of metal that had been touched by hands centuries ago. "My uncle traced our family lineage to Shu Li Jun. He's dedicated his life to restoring her place in scientific history." William Chen, Reynolds nodded. "His research paper on Ming Dynasty astronomical calculations was revolutionary. Is he still teaching?" "No," Olivia replied, running her fingers gently along the instrument's edge. "He's retired now, and his health is declining. His 75th birthday is next month. I had hoped—" She trailed off, embarrassed to admit her failed plan. "You hoped to acquire this for him," Reynolds finished for her. "A noble gesture, though Thornfield seemed determined to prevent your participation today." His direct acknowledgement of the auction house's behavior startled her. "You noticed that?" I notice most things, Professor Chen, including how knowledge and sincerity are often undervalued in spaces designed to worship wealth and status. He gestured to the astronomical device in her hands. Do you know why I purchased this? Olivia stared at Gabriel Reynolds, uncertain how to answer his question about why he had purchased the Empress Celestial. The device still rested in her hands, its brass surfaces gleaming under the room's soft lighting. Her fingers traced the intricate dragon motifs as she considered her response. I couldn't begin to guess your reasons, Mr. Reynolds, she finally said, her voice measured. But based on your other acquisitions today, I'd say you have a genuine appreciation for scientific history. Reynolds nodded, a subtle smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Accurate but incomplete. He gestured to a pair of leather chairs positioned by the window. Please, sit. We have a lot to discuss, and I suspect you've had enough of standing, while being condescended to for one day. The casual acknowledgement of her treatment made Olivia's cheeks warm as she carefully returned the astronomical instrument to its velvet-lined case before taking a seat. Through the window, she could see Boston's historic skyline, the afternoon sun gilding the buildings with autumn light. The tech industry often suffers from historical amnesia, Reynolds continued, settling into the chair opposite her. We celebrate innovation as though it were uniquely modern, forgetting that figures like Shu Jun solved complex problems with elegant solutions centuries ago. He leaned forward slightly. Your research on female astronomers of Imperial China reminds us that brilliance has always existed, even when systems were designed to overlook it. Olivia studied him with growing curiosity. Most wealthy collectors she'd encountered viewed historical pieces as status symbols or investments. Few demonstrated genuine knowledge of their cultural context. That's kind of you to say, but my monograph hardly made waves outside academic circles. I'm surprised you've even heard of it. I make it a point to read beyond the expected, Reynolds replied. Your work connecting astronomical innovations to social dynamics was particularly insightful, which brings me to my proposal. Proposal? Olivia echoed, confusion evident in her voice. Reynolds nodded, his expression turning more businesslike. My foundation is establishing a new museum wing dedicated to overlooked scientific pioneers, with a special focus on women and minorities whose contributions were historically diminished. We're looking for a consulting curator with expertise in exactly your area of specialization. Olivia blinked, momentarily speechless. Such an opportunity would normally be beyond her reach, typically going to academics from prestigious universities or established museum professionals with decades of experience. While I'm flattered, she began carefully, I'm sure there are more qualified candidates from larger institutions who would... There aren't, Reynolds interrupted, his tone matter-of-fact rather than argumentative. Your approach balances technical accuracy with cultural context in a way that makes complex scientific history accessible. That's precisely what this project needs. Before Olivia could respond, a sharp knock at the door interrupted them. Without waiting for an answer, Preston Blackwell entered, his expression carefully composed, but his eyes darting between them with barely concealed curiosity. Mr. Reynolds, I do apologize for the intrusion, but several of our premier clients are quite eager to congratulate you on your acquisition, Blackwell said smoothly. The Harringtons in particular have expressed interest in discussing the Empress Celestial. Sophia is quite the connoisseur of Asian artifacts. Reynolds' expression cooled noticeably. Is she? How fascinating, considering she was telling everyone within earshot earlier that this piece is a reproduction. Blackwell's smile faltered. A misunderstanding, I'm sure. Miss Harrington is quite knowledgeable, but occasionally... Mr. Blackwell, Reynolds cut in, his voice maintaining its even tone, but carrying unmistakable authority. I'm in the middle, of an important discussion with Professor Chen. Perhaps you could inform Ms. Harrington that I'll be available after the auction concludes." The auction director glanced at Olivia with poorly disguised disdain before nodding stiffly. "Of course. My apologies for the interruption." He hesitated at the door. "Professor Chen, I believe there may have been some confusion earlier regarding our bidding requirements. If you're interested in any remaining lots, we could possibly reconsider your registration." The sudden reversal was so transparent that Olivia almost laughed. Instead, she simply said, "That's very generous, but I've found what I came for." After Blackwell departed, Reynolds shook his head slightly. "The art world's sudden changes of heart never cease to amaze me. Now, where were we?" "You were discussing a consulting position," Olivia reminded him, still processing the unexpected offer. "Yes. The position would be part-time initially, allowing you to maintain your teaching duties if you wish. We'd cover travel expenses for necessary meetings in San Francisco, plus a consulting fee commensurate with your expertise." He gestured to the Empress Celestial. "This would be one of our centerpiece items, of course." Olivia's mind raced with possibilities. Such a position would not only advance her career beyond anything she'd imagined possible, but would also shine light on the historical figures she'd dedicated her life to studying. Yet something didn't quite add up. "Mr. Reynolds, while I'm deeply honored by your offer, I have to ask, why me specifically? You could have approached me through conventional channels at any time. Instead, you purchased an artifact for $5 million and arranged this meeting in the middle of an auction." Reynolds studied her for a moment, then nodded as if she'd passed some sort of test. Direct and perceptive. Good. He leaned back in his chair. "Two reasons. First, I wanted to see firsthand how Thornfield treated a qualified expert who didn't fit their preconceived notion of wealth or influence. Their behavior confirmed my suspicions about certain practices in the high-end auction world." His gaze drifted to the Empress Celestial. "Second, and more personally, your uncle's research was instrumental in my early education. William Chen's papers on computational astronomy were among the first serious academic works I encountered as a teenager. His approach to cross-disciplinary thinking influenced my own." Olivia felt a swell of pride at hearing her uncle's work acknowledged. He would be honored to know that. His contributions were often overlooked in his field. "A recurring theme for genuine innovators," Reynolds agreed, "which brings me to a secondary proposal. The Empress Celestial's historical significance extends beyond its material value. I'd like your uncle to have access to it for his ongoing research. In fact," he continued, "I'm hoping both of you would consider allowing it to be displayed with attribution to your family connection in our museum." Olivia stared at him, momentarily at a loss for words. The offer was beyond generous. It was the perfect resolution, allowing the artifact to be preserved, studied, and publicly acknowledged as part of her family's legacy. That would mean everything to him, she finally managed, emotion threatening to overcome her professional composure. Reynolds nodded, satisfied. "Excellent. Have your people contact my people, as they say." He produced a business card from his jacket pocket. "My personal assistant's information. She'll arrange everything." As Olivia accepted the card, the door opened again, this time without even the courtesy of a knock. Sophia Harrington swept in, her entourage hovering behind her like an expensive shadow. Her practiced smile was fixed firmly in place, though her eyes flickered with irritation when she saw Olivia still present. "Gabriel, everyone's simply buzzing about your spectacular bid. I simply had to congratulate you personally," she gushed, completely ignoring Olivia. "Such a magnificent piece. I was just telling Camille and Derek how the craftsmanship is absolutely unparalleled, regardless of its historical questions. Reynolds stood, his posture straight but not welcoming. Ms. Harrington, I believe Mr. Blackwell informed you I was in a meeting. Sophia waved a dismissive hand. Oh, I'm sure Professor Miller, was it? Won't mind if I steal you for just a moment. After all, the Roosevelt Foundation Fundraiser Committee is dying to know if you'll chair our autumn gala. Chen, Olivia corrected quietly. Professor Chen. Sophia barely glanced in her direction. Of course. Now, Gabriel, about the gala. I'm afraid I'll have to decline, Reynolds interrupted smoothly. And I must insist on continuing my meeting with Professor Chen. She's consulting on a significant project for my foundation. For the first time, Sophia really looked at Olivia, disbelief evident in her expression. Consulting? Her? On what? Exactly. Budget decorating tips for your offices? The casual cruelty hung in the air for a moment before Reynolds responded, his tone cooling several degrees. Professor Chen is an internationally recognized expert in historical astronomy and Asian scientific artifacts. She'll be curating our new museum wing, focusing on overlooked scientific pioneers. Olivia watched as Sophia's expression cycled through confusion, disbelief, and calculation. The social climbing instinct was practically visible as Sophia reassessed the situation and Olivia's potential value in her network. How fascinating, Sophia managed, her smile strained. I had no idea. We should absolutely connect later, Professor. My family foundation supports several educational initiatives that might align with your work. The sudden pivot to networking made Olivia's stomach turn, but she maintained her professional demeanor. I'll be sure to keep that in mind, Ms. Harrington. Reynolds checked his watch. If you'll excuse us, we have several details to finalize before the auction concludes. Recognizing the dismissal, Sophia nodded stiffly and backed out of the room, her entourage following like a receding tide. The door had barely closed when Reynolds let out a small sigh. I apologize for the interruption. The auction world seems to operate on its own peculiar social rules. I'm familiar with the type, Olivia replied, thinking of similar academic politics at larger universities, though usually with smaller budgets. Reynolds chuckled, the sound genuine. Indeed. He glanced at his watch again. I'm afraid I do have a commitment I can't reschedule. My assistant will contact you tomorrow to arrange the details of our collaboration. Olivia stood, carefully sliding the business card into her messenger bag. Thank you, Mr. Reynolds, not just for the opportunity, but for... She gestured vaguely, searching for words that wouldn't sound overblown. No thanks necessary, he assured her. Talent deserves recognition, regardless of packaging. As they prepared to leave the private room, Reynolds paused with his hand on the doorknob. One more thing, Professor Chen. Would you be willing to deliver the Empress Celestial to your uncle personally? I think he should hear about its journey from you rather than through a courier. Olivia hesitated, surprised by the suggestion. You'd trust me with a $5 million artifact? I'd trust the great niece of Shu Lijun and an expert in astronomical artifacts to transport a family heirloom, yes. His expression was serious. Some things belong with the people who truly understand their value. The implication that the artifact was, in some sense, returning to its rightful place moved Olivia deeply. In that case, I'd be honored. When they emerged from the private room, the main auction was concluding. Heads turned as Reynolds and Olivia walked together toward the exhibition area where auction staff were beginning to process purchased items for their new owners. Preston Blackwell materialized from the crowd, practically radiating anxious energy. Mr. Reynolds, I trust your meeting was productive. His gaze darted to Olivia with new calculation, clearly reassessing her potential importance. Extremely. Reynolds confirmed. Professor Chen will be handling the transportation arrangements for the Empress Celestial. Please ensure all documentation is prepared accordingly. Blackwell's expression flickered with confusion. Professor Chen will be... I see, of course. He turned to Olivia with a sudden, ingratiating smile. We'll have everything ready immediately. And please accept my sincere apologies for any misunderstanding earlier. Thornfield values educational institutions as clients, and we'd be delighted to establish an ongoing relationship with Westbridge College. The swift transformation from dismissive to deferential was almost comical. Olivia maintained her composure, though she couldn't resist a small demonstration of the professional authority she'd always possessed, regardless of others' recognition. Thank you, Mr. Blackwell. I'll be sure to mention your cooperation when I address the Association of University Art Historians next month. Auction house practices in relation to academic institutions have become quite the topic of discussion lately. Blackwell blanched slightly at the subtle implication. We pride ourselves on our educational outreach, he managed. I'll personally oversee the processing of the Empress Celestial for you. As Blackwell hurried away, Reynolds gave Olivia an approving nod. Well handled. The art world could use more of that directness. Across the exhibition hall, Olivia noticed Sophia and her friends watching the interaction with intense interest. Their expressions ranged from confusion to calculation as they witnessed Blackwell's deferential behavior. Olivia realized how the scene must appear, the modest professor they'd ridiculed now in apparent partnership with a billionaire, taking possession of the auction's most spectacular item. The group's dynamic had visibly shifted. Derek whispered something to Camille, who nodded with wide eyes. Vanessa pulled out her phone, likely searching for information about Olivia online. Most telling was Sophia's expression, a mixture of social calculation and dawning alarm, as she realized she might have seriously misjudged someone with unexpected connections. Marcus approached with a clipboard and a special carrying case for the Empress Celestial. Unlike Blackwell's newly discovered respect, Marcus's manner retained its genuine quality. Professor Chen, everything's ready for you to sign, he said, handing her the documentation. I've included detailed handling instructions and the full provenance records you requested earlier. You requested the provenance records? Reynolds asked, one eyebrow raised. Olivia nodded as she reviewed the paperwork. I wanted to confirm the authentication chain, particularly the Imperial Palace Museum verification. I had doubts about some claims that it might be a reproduction. Marcus cleared his throat. Those rumors were unfortunately encouraged by certain parties who wanted to suppress bidding interest, he said carefully, his gaze flicking meaningfully toward Sophia's group. A common tactic, Reynolds noted, his tone matter-of-fact rather than judgmental. Create doubt about an item's authenticity to discourage competitive bidding, then acquire it at a reduced price. Olivia signed the final document, feeling a sense of completion that went beyond the transaction itself. Fortunately, historical truth tends to prevail, even if it sometimes requires intervention. As Marcus carefully handed over the protective case containing the Empress Celestial, Olivia felt the weight of its significance, both historical and personal. This object, created by her ancestor centuries ago, had traveled through time and space to return to family hands, albeit in a way she never could have anticipated. Reynolds checked his watch once more. My car is waiting outside. Can we offer you a ride, Professor Chen? Before Olivia could respond, a commotion near the entrance drew their attention. A security guard was engaged in what appeared to be a heated discussion with an elderly Asian man who was attempting to enter the auction house. Despite the man's obvious agitation, the guard maintained a blocking position, gesturing toward the door. Olivia felt her heart skip. Uncle William, she murmured in disbelief, then louder. That's my uncle. Without waiting for a response, She hurried across the exhibition hall, protective case clutched carefully against her chest. As she approached, she could hear the security guard's dismissive tone. "Sir, the auction is concluding, and we're not admitting any new visitors. If you don't have an invitation or registration, I must ask you to leave." Uncle William, leaning heavily on his cane, showed remarkable composure despite his evident frustration. "I'm looking for my niece, Olivia Chen. She's here for the auction. If you could simply inform her—" "Uncle William!" Olivia called out, quickening her pace. The elderly man turned, relief washing over his features. Despite his 74 years and recent health struggles, William Chen retained the dignified bearing of a lifetime educator. His wire-framed glasses sat precisely on his nose, and his tweed jacket, worn at the elbows but impeccably clean, spoke of academic traditions that valued knowledge over appearances. "Olivia," he said, the tension leaving his shoulders, "I was worried when you didn't answer your phone." The security guard looked between them, uncertain but still blocking the entrance. "Ma'am, is this gentleman with you?" "Yes, he's my uncle and a renowned scholar of astronomy," Olivia replied firmly, "and he's welcome to join me." "The auction house has strict policies about unregistered visitors," the guard began, but a new voice interrupted. "I believe we can make an exception." Gabriel Reynolds had followed Olivia across the hall and now stood beside her, his presence immediately altering the dynamic. "Dr. William Chen is expected." The security guard's eyes widened in recognition. "Mr. Reynolds, I apologize. I wasn't informed. Please, sir," he stepped aside, gesturing to Uncle William, "right this way." William looked questioningly at Olivia, who made a small gesture indicating she would explain later. He stepped forward, nodding politely to Reynolds. "Thank you for your assistance, though I'm afraid we haven't been introduced." "Gabriel Reynolds," the tech founder said, extending his hand. "It's an honor to meet you, Dr. Chen. Your work on computational astronomy across cultural traditions has been influential in unexpected fields." William's eyebrows rose as he shook Reynolds' hand. "You're familiar with my research? That's unusual outside certain academic circles." "I've found that innovation often happens at the intersection of seemingly unrelated disciplines," Reynolds replied. "Your papers on how Ming Dynasty astronomers solved complex calculations without modern computational tools offered insights relevant to my early work in algorithm optimization." For perhaps the first time in Olivia's memory, her uncle appeared genuinely surprised. "I see," he said thoughtfully. "Most fascinating." As they spoke, Olivia noticed Preston Blackwell hovering nearby, visibly agitated by the security guard's initial treatment of Uncle William. He approached with a strained smile. "Dr. Chen, welcome to Thornfield. Had we known you were coming, we would have arranged VIP access, of course. Please accept our apologies for any inconvenience." William regarded Blackwell with the mild expression he typically reserved for overconfident students. "No apology necessary. I came unannounced." "Uncle," Olivia said, drawing his attention to the case she carried, "there's something I need to show you." They moved to a quieter corner of the entrance hall, away from curious onlookers. With careful movements, Olivia opened the protective case to reveal the Empress Celestial. Uncle William's breath caught, his eyes widening behind his glasses. "The Shuli Jun instrument," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You found it." "More than found it," Olivia replied softly. "It's coming home with us." William looked up sharply, confusion evident. "Home? But how?" "The estimated value was—" "A generous patron of science and history," Olivia explained, nodding toward Reynolds, who had stepped back to give them privacy. "He purchased it for his foundation's museum, but wants you to have access to it for your research. He also suggested I transport it personally. Uncle William's gaze shifted to Reynolds, reassessing the tech founder with new understanding. That's extraordinarily generous. He's also offered me a consulting position to help curate a new museum wing dedicated to overlooked scientific pioneers, Olivia added, still hardly believing it herself. The Empress Celestial will be a centerpiece, with acknowledgement of our family connection. William shook his head slightly, overwhelmed. When you said you were coming to the auction, I never imagined. This is beyond anything I could have hoped for. Across the hall, Olivia caught sight of Sophia and her friends now openly staring at the unfolding scene. The social climber's expression had transformed from dismissive to calculating to openly envious as she watched the interaction between the Chens and Gabriel Reynolds. As if sensing her gaze, Uncle William glanced in their direction. "Friends of yours?" he asked with gentle irony. "Hardly," Olivia replied. "They made quite clear what they thought of someone like me being in a place like this." William nodded, understanding immediately. He'd faced similar prejudice throughout his academic career. "And now they're reassessing," Olivia said, surprising herself with the lack of satisfaction she felt. The validation of these shallow people meant nothing compared to the historical significance of the moment. "But it doesn't matter." "Indeed it doesn't," William agreed, his attention returning to the astronomical instrument. With reverent fingers, he traced the Chinese characters etched into the brass rings. "Ni zhong yu hui jia le," he murmured. "You've finally come home," Olivia translated softly. Reynolds approached, respectfully waiting until they acknowledged him before speaking. "Dr. Chen, if you and your niece would be comfortable with it, I'd like to arrange a proper unveiling of the Empress Celestial at the museum opening. Your insights into its historical and personal significance would be invaluable to our visitors." William straightened his posture, academic dignity evident in his bearing despite his age and frailty. "Mr. Reynolds, I would be honored to contribute to such an event. Xu Lijun's work has been overlooked for centuries. Any opportunity to restore her rightful place in scientific history would be most welcome." "Perfect," Reynolds said with evident satisfaction. "My assistant will coordinate with Professor Chen on the details." He glanced toward the entrance where a sleek black car had pulled up. "My appointment awaits, unfortunately. Professor Chen, my team will contact you tomorrow. Dr. Chen, it's been a true pleasure." As Reynolds departed, Olivia carefully closed the case containing the Empress Celestial. The weight of the moment, its historical significance, the unexpected turns of fortune, the vindication of her uncle's life's work, settled around her like a mantle. "Shall we go home, Uncle?" she asked, offering her arm for support. William nodded, his eyes bright with emotion. "Yes, we have much to discuss and much to celebrate." As they turned to leave, Preston Blackwell intercepted them once more, his manner now the epitome of deference. "Professor Chen, Dr. Chen, please allow me to escort you to your vehicle. Thornfield would be honored to assist with any future acquisitions or research needs you might have." "Thank you, but that won't be necessary," Olivia replied, her tone polite but firm. "We know our way out." She caught sight of Marcus watching from nearby, a small smile playing on his lips. Unlike the others, whose attitudes had shifted with the winds of perceived importance, his expression held genuine approval. She nodded to him in acknowledgement, a small gesture of recognition between people who valued substance over appearance. As they walked toward the entrance, the grand doors opened automatically before them. Outside, Boston's historic streets were bathed in late afternoon light, the autumn leaves dancing in gentle swirls around the marble steps. The everyday world continued, unchanged by the drama that had unfolded within Thornfield's rarefied atmosphere. Yet something had changed. not just in the tangible acquisition of a priceless artifact or the unexpected career opportunity, but in the quiet validation of values that both Olivia and her uncle had long held. The worth of knowledge over prestige, the importance of historical truth over social status, the victory of genuine expertise over the shallow judgment of appearances. They descended the steps together, the Empress Celestial secure in its case, finally returning to the family from which it had been separated for centuries. Behind them, through Thornfield's glass doors, the wealthy patrons of the auction house watched their departure with expressions ranging from curiosity to calculation, already reimagining the story of the day to better position themselves in its unexpected narrative. But Olivia and William didn't look back. They stepped into the flow of pedestrians, two modest figures carrying an extraordinary treasure, both the physical artifact and the intangible legacy it represented. The real value of what they carried couldn't be measured in millions of dollars or social currency, but in the unbroken connection between past and present, and in the restoration of a brilliant woman's contribution to human knowledge. As they walked toward the subway station, William pointed out a particularly vibrant maple tree, its leaves shimmering like flames against the blue October sky. Beauty exists whether or not it's recognized, he observed, but there's a special satisfaction when it finally receives its due. Olivia glanced down at the case containing the Empress Celestial and smiled. Yes, she agreed. There certainly is. 2 blocks away, they passed a small second-hand bookshop, its windows filled with worn volumes containing forgotten wisdom. Olivia made a mental note to visit it soon. After all, one never knew where valuable discoveries might be hiding, overlooked by those too fixated on surface appearances to recognize the true worth of what lay before them. Uncle William patted her hand where it rested on his arm. "Your parents would have been proud today," he said quietly. Olivia felt a swell of emotion at the mention of the parents she had lost so young. "I hope so." "They would," William assured her. "Not because of connections or acquisitions, but because you stood your ground. You remained true to yourself in a space designed to make you feel small." The validation warmed her more than any social acceptance could have. As they continued their journey home, Olivia reflected on the day's unexpected turns. She had entered Thornfield Auction House as an outsider, judged and dismissed based on appearances. She was leaving with far more than she had dreamed possible, not just the artifact and opportunity, but with the knowledge that sometimes, in the most unexpected ways, sincere dedication to truth and knowledge truly did prevail over shallow judgments and social hierarchies. Ahead of them, the city stretched out, filled with possibilities that hadn't existed that morning. The world hadn't changed, but her place within it had shifted in ways she was only beginning to understand. Whatever came next, Olivia knew that the values Uncle William had instilled in her, the same values that had guided Julie June centuries ago, would continue to light her path forward. As they descended into the subway station, leaving behind the rarefied world of Thornfield and its wealthy patrons, Olivia felt a sense of peace settle over her. The Empress Celestial was going where it belonged, not as a trophy in a collector's vault or as a status symbol in a socialite's display case, but as a living piece of history that would continue to educate and inspire. In the end, that was the greatest victory of all. What none of them realized, not Sophia with her social calculations, not Blackwell with his sudden deference, not even Reynolds with his genuine appreciation for historical significance, was that this day marked only the beginning. The Empress Celestial, restored to the family line of its creator, would soon reveal secrets that had remained hidden for centuries, waiting for the right moment and the right people to bring them into the light. But that was a story for another day. 3 weeks later, the autumn colors had deepened across Boston. transforming the city into a tapestry of gold and crimson. Olivia sat in her small office at Westbridge Community College, grading papers while occasionally glancing at the elegant case containing the Empress Celestial. She had barely let it out of her sight since the auction, transporting it between home and office for her uncle's research. The device had already yielded remarkable discoveries. Uncle William had identified previously unnoticed engravings that referenced astronomical phenomena documented only in obscure imperial records. Their findings had generated considerable excitement in academic circles, with several prestigious journals requesting papers on the artifact. A knock at her door interrupted Olivia's thoughts. Her department chair, Professor Eleanor Graves, peered in with an expression of barely contained excitement. "You're not going to believe who's waiting." "In the main office," Eleanor said, her voice lowered conspiratorially. "Sophia Harrington and her father, Robert Harrington, yes, that Robert Harrington, the investment banker, they're asking for you specifically." Olivia set down her pen, genuinely surprised. After the auction, she had expected Sophia to retreat to her exclusive social circles, not to seek her out, especially not at Westbridge. "Did they say what they want?" Eleanor shook her head. "They're being very mysterious, but they were quite insistent. And they brought along a photographer from Boston Society magazine." That detail made Olivia instantly wary. "A photographer? Why would they?" "I have no idea, but the development office is practically vibrating with excitement. The Harringtons are major donors to several universities, though never to community colleges like ours." Eleanor's expression turned concerned. "You don't have to meet with them if you don't want to. I can send them away." Olivia appreciated her colleague's protectiveness. Eleanor had been one of the few people who genuinely supported her research when other academics dismissed it as niche or obscure. She considered declining the meeting, but curiosity won out. "It's fine. I'll see them in the conference room. Could you make sure Uncle William is informed? He's in the library archives, and I think he should be present for whatever this is." Eleanor nodded and disappeared down the hallway as Olivia gathered her materials. She carefully locked the Empress Celestial in her office safe before making her way to the small conference room that doubled as a faculty lounge. When she entered, Sophia and Robert Harrington stood near the window, both impeccably dressed in what they probably considered casual business attire, but which still screamed wealth and privilege. Sophia's cream-colored pantsuit likely cost more than Olivia's monthly salary, while her father exuded the confidence of someone accustomed to dominating every room he entered. Beside them stood a professional photographer adjusting camera equipment, and in the corner, looking highly uncomfortable, was a young man Olivia recognized from the development office. "Professor Chen," Sophia greeted her with a practiced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Thank you for making time for us on such short notice." "Ms. Harrington," Olivia replied neutrally, "this is unexpected." Robert Harrington stepped forward, extending his hand. "Professor Chen, a pleasure to meet you. I'm Robert Harrington. My daughter has told me about your fascinating work with historical astronomical artifacts." Olivia shook his hand, noting the careful phrasing. She doubted Sophia had mentioned her own behavior at the auction. "What brings you to Westbridge? We don't often host visitors from Boston's financial elite." "Direct and to the point. I appreciate that," Robert said with a chuckle that suggested he was unaccustomed to such straightforwardness. "We're here with a proposal that could benefit both Westbridge and your research significantly." Before he could elaborate, Uncle William entered the room with Eleanor. Despite his advancing age and health issues, he carried himself with the natural dignity of a lifetime educator. Olivia made quick introductions, noting the flash of recognition in Robert Harrington's eyes when William's name was mentioned. "Dr. Chen, your reputation precedes you," Robert said. "Your work on astronomical calculation methods across cultures is quite renowned in certain circles." William nodded politely but without warmth. In certain circles, yes. Though I find recognition often follows funding rather than merit in academia. An awkward silence followed his observation until Sophia stepped forward. We should get to the point of our visit. The Harrington Foundation is launching a new initiative to support culturally significant research at overlooked institutions. We'd like to offer Westbridge a substantial grant to establish a dedicated research center for historical scientific artifacts, with a particular focus on Asian astronomy. Olivia exchanged a glance with her uncle, both sensing there was more to this sudden generosity than philanthropic interest. That's a surprising proposal, considering Westbridge has never been on the Harrington Foundation's radar before. Fresh perspectives are important in philanthropy, Robert replied smoothly. We've been impressed by the attention your work has received recently, particularly your collaboration with Gabriel Reynolds Foundation. And there it was, the real motivation behind their visit. Olivia had barely communicated her new consulting position publicly, but news traveled fast in certain circles. The Harringtons clearly saw an opportunity to associate themselves with Reynolds' prestige through her. The grant would be substantial, $5 million over 5 years, Sophia continued, her tone suggesting she was conferring an enormous favor. We'd want to name it the Harrington Chen Center for Historical Astronomy, of course, with appropriate press coverage and social media visibility. The development officer in the corner made a small, involuntary sound of excitement at the "east" figure, but Olivia remained measured in her response. That's a generous offer that would require significant discussion with our administration and board. What specifically prompted this interest in our work? Sophia and her father exchanged a quick glance before Robert answered. We've always supported diverse academic endeavors, Professor Chen. Your recent acquisition of the Empress Celestial demonstrates exactly the kind of cultural preservation we value. William, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke. Fascinating. And would this support come with any expectations regarding access to the artifact or control over research directions? The directness of the question clearly caught Robert off guard. Well, we would naturally expect some degree of acknowledgement in publications and presentations, perhaps priority access for certain Harrington Foundation events. Nothing unreasonable. And I imagine you'd want photo opportunities with the artifact for your social media and donor materials, Olivia added, keeping her tone neutral despite her growing suspicion. Standard practice for major grants, Robert confirmed. In fact, we brought a photographer today for some preliminary images, just to announce our intentions, you understand. Olivia noticed Sophia's gaze repeatedly drifting to the door, as if expecting someone else to arrive at any moment. The photographer had positioned himself to capture the entire room, not just the participants in the discussion. May I ask what prompted this specific timing? Olivia questioned. The Empress Celestial has been documented in academic catalogues for years, yet only after Gabriel Reynolds purchased it did it suddenly become of interest to your foundation. A flicker of discomfort crossed Robert's face, quickly masked by professional cordiality. Mr. Reynolds clearly has an eye for underappreciated treasures in both artifacts and talent. His interest only confirmed what we should have recognized earlier. Before Olivia could respond, the conference room door opened again. Gabriel Reynolds entered, followed by a woman Olivia recognized as his chief of staff from their video conferences. Planning the museum exhibit, the surprise was genuine on both sides. Reynolds hadn't expected to find the Harringtons, and they clearly hadn't anticipated his actual appearance despite their apparent hopes for a chance encounter. "Mr. Reynolds!" Sophia exclaimed, her voice rising half an octave. "What an extraordinary coincidence. We were just discussing collaborative opportunities with Professor Chen." Reynolds' expression remained neutral as he took in the scene. The photographer, the Harringtons' eager postures, the confused development officer. Not a coincidence, actually. I had a scheduled meeting with Professor Chen and Dr. William Chen regarding our museum project. He turned to Olivia with an apologetic smile. I hope we're not interrupting something important. The Harringtons, who are just presenting a grant proposal for Westbridge, Olivia explained, observing how Sophia subtly repositioned herself to be captured in the same frame as Reynolds by the photographer. How generous, Reynolds remarked, though something in his tone suggested skepticism. Westbridge does remarkable work with limited resources. Robert Harrington seized the opening. Indeed, our foundation has been developing a new initiative focused on overlooked institutions. We'd be honored if Quantum Dynamics might consider joining forces with us on this project. Perhaps a joint naming opportunity. The Reynolds-Harrington Center has a certain prestige to it. The naked social. Climbing was so transparent that Olivia had to suppress a wince. Reynolds, however, maintained perfect composure. An interesting proposition, though our foundation's commitments are quite set for the next fiscal year. Perhaps we could discuss this at another time. He skillfully redirected the conversation. Professor Chen, Dr. Chen, I've brought the preliminary designs for the museum exhibition space. I believe you'll find the dedicated area for the Empress Celestial particularly appropriate. He handed Olivia a tablet displaying architectural renderings of an elegant, minimalist gallery space. At its center was a special display designed specifically for the astronomical device, with interactive educational components surrounding it. This is remarkable, Uncle William said, genuinely impressed as he studied the designs. The educational potential is extraordinary. That's my hope, Reynolds agreed. We want visitors to understand not just what the artifact is, but the historical and scientific context that makes it significant. Your research will be central to that narrative. The Harringtons watched this exchange with barely concealed frustration, their planned photo opportunity and networking moment slipping away. Sophia made one more attempt. Mr. Reynolds, we'd love to get your perspective on our grant proposal, perhaps over dinner tonight? The Harrington Foundation is hosting a small gathering at Le Ciel, very exclusive, just 20 or so key philanthropists from the Boston area. Reynolds glanced at his watch. Unfortunately, I'm flying back to San Francisco this evening, but I'm sure Professor Chen can convey any relevant details about your proposal. He turned to Olivia. Speaking of time constraints, shall we proceed with our scheduled discussion? The polite dismissal was unmistakable. Robert Harrington, ever the strategist, recognized defeat and shifted tactics. Of course, we wouldn't want to intrude on your meeting. Professor Chen will leave the proposal documents with your development office and follow up next week. He handed Olivia his business card. Please consider our offer carefully. $5 million could transform Westbridge's research capabilities. As the Harringtons reluctantly prepared to leave, Sophia made one final attempt. Professor Chen, I do hope you'll reconsider your position about the Boston Historical Society's gala next month. Having the Empress Celestial on display would be such a meaningful cultural moment for our members. Olivia blinked in surprise. I'm not aware of receiving any invitation from the Historical Society. A flush crept up Sophia's neck. Oh, how strange. I specifically requested that an invitation be sent last week. I'll have them resend it immediately. After the Harringtons departed, taking their disappointed photographer with them, Reynolds turned to Olivia with a raised eyebrow. Impressive maneuvering, he observed. They came hoping to leverage your connection to my foundation, didn't they? No, while setting themselves up as my patrons, Olivia confirmed. Amazing how valuable my work suddenly became once it had your endorsement attached to it. William shook his head with a mixture of amusement and resignation. The academic world has always operated this way. Recognition rarely comes for the work itself, but for who values the work. Reynolds nodded thoughtfully. Unfortunately true, across many fields. But sometimes that system can be redirected toward more deserving recipients. He gestured to the tablet, still displaying the museum designs. Shall we discuss the real reason for my visit? For the next hour, they reviewed the exhibition plans in detail. Reynolds' team had created a comprehensive educational framework around the Empress Celestial, positioning it not as a curiosity, but as a significant scientific and cultural artifact that told a larger story about knowledge, innovation, and the systematic erasure of contributions by women and minorities throughout history. The exhibition opens in 2 months, Reynolds explained. We'd like both of you to speak at the gala opening. Dr. Chen, your historical expertise is irreplaceable. And Professor Chen, your research on Shulizhun specifically has shaped our entire approach. Uncle William looked deeply moved. After decades of struggling to bring these stories to light, to see them presented this way, he cleared his throat, emotions momentarily overwhelming him. Olivia squeezed his hand, understanding completely. For years, they had worked in relative obscurity, their research considered niche or peripheral by mainstream academia. Now, suddenly, that same work was being recognized not as a curiosity, but as an important corrective to historical narratives. There's one other matter, Reynolds continued, his expression turning more serious. My legal team has been investigating the provenance chain of the Empress Celestial, particularly its removal from China during the colonial period. We've uncovered documentation suggesting it was taken under questionable circumstances from your family's ancestral home in Nanjing. Olivia straightened in surprise. Are you saying it was stolen? Not in the modern legal sense, but certainly unethically appropriated during a period when Chinese cultural treasures were being systematically removed to Western collections. Reynolds pulled out another document. Which brings me to this. Our foundation would like to formally recognize your family as the artifact's cultural custodians. He handed them a legal document outlining a unique arrangement. While the Reynolds Foundation would maintain technical ownership for insurance and security purposes, the Chen family would be acknowledged as the artifact's cultural owners and would have permanent input on its display, research access, and educational context. This ensures the artifact remains accessible to the public while respecting its cultural origins, Reynolds explained. It also creates a potential model for other institutions grappling with questions of cultural repatriation. William studied the document carefully, his academic precision evident in how thoroughly he read each clause. Finally, he looked up at Reynolds with newfound respect. This is unprecedented in my experience. Most collectors jealously guard their ownership rights. Reynolds shrugged slightly. I'm interested in advancing knowledge and correcting historical oversights, not in possessing trophies. The Empress Celestial belongs to humanity's scientific heritage, but its story is inextricably linked to your family. As they finalized the details of their agreement, Olivia reflected on how dramatically her life had changed since that fateful day at the auction. What had begun as a humble attempt to honor her uncle's birthday had cascaded into a series of events that were redefining both their careers and the historical recognition of their ancestors' work. Later that afternoon, after Reynolds had departed for his flight back to San Francisco, Olivia and Uncle William returned to her office, where the Empress Celestial waited in its secure case. As William carefully lifted the instrument, examining its brass rings in the afternoon light, his expression was contemplative. You know what's truly remarkable about all this, he said quietly. Not the money or the recognition, but the fact that after centuries, Shulizhun's work is finally being understood on its own terms. not as a curiosity or an exception, but as a significant contribution to human knowledge. Olivia nodded, understanding. Perfectly. That's what I've always loved about your approach to history, Uncle. You taught me to look beyond the obvious narratives, to question why certain contributions were centered while others were erased. William carefully traced the Chinese characters etched into the astronomical device's outer ring. This instrument wasn't just a scientific tool, it was an act of resistance. Shu Lijun created it in defiance of a system that told women they couldn't understand the heavens. Olivia thought about Sophia Harrington and the auction house director, about all the people who had dismissed her based on her appearance or institution. Different century, similar prejudices, assumptions about who belonged in which spaces, whose knowledge counted, whose contributions mattered. And now, her work will educate thousands of visitors, she said with satisfaction. People will learn her name, understand her contributions. That's a kind of justice, isn't it? William nodded slowly. A delayed justice, but justice nonetheless. He carefully returned the Empress Celestial to its case, and perhaps a lesson for those who are too quick to judge by appearances. As they prepared to leave campus, Olivia's phone chimed with a message. It was from Marcus, the kind auction assistant from Thornfield who had tried to help her despite his employer's disdain. Just heard the news about Reynolds Foundation's special exhibition featuring the Empress Celestial, he had written. Thornfield's director is beside himself that he didn't secure the display rights for our institution. Entire auction house is buzzing about your family connection to the artifact. Wondering if you might need a research assistant with auction house experience for your expanded department. Current workplace culture leaves something to be desired. Olivia smiled, thinking of the earnest young man who had shown genuine interest in the artifact's history rather than just its monetary value. With the new opportunities opening up, perhaps there was room for more allies in their work. The following weekend, Olivia and William visited Uncle William's modest home to celebrate his 75th birthday. The gathering was small, just a few close colleagues and former students who had become friends over the years. Unlike the opulent displays of wealth she had witnessed at the auction house, this celebration was rich in warmth, intellectual camaraderie, and genuine affection. On the mantelpiece, carefully displayed in its custom case, the Empress Celestial caught the afternoon light streaming through the windows. Not a status symbol or an investment, but a bridge between past and present, between an ancestor who had defied conventions centuries ago and her descendants who continued that legacy of intellectual courage. As William blew out the candles on his birthday cake, surrounded by people who valued him for his mind and character rather than wealth or status, Olivia thought about the true meaning of value. The Harringtons and their social circle might never understand that some treasures couldn't be purchased at auction, regardless of how many millions one bid. The most valuable things, integrity, knowledge, connection to one's heritage, the courage to stand one's ground in spaces designed to exclude, these were beyond price. And unlike the fleeting prestige of social climbing, their worth only deepened with time. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.